So I had an interesting experience with the hepatitis B vaccine that I've told you guys about this story before, but I was reminded of it over the weekend because the ACIP committee, which is essentially recommends to the CDC what immunizations should be included on the childhood recommended immunization schedule, they cast a vote about the hepatitis B vaccine, and they voted to change the childhood recommended immunization schedule from what it currently is. Now, the hepatitis B vaccine, for those who are uninitiated, it is right now recommended by the CDC to be given to newborns on the day of their birth. It is part of the ritual of post-birth in the hospital that they try to vaccinate your brand new baby with the hepatitis B vaccine. And a lot of parents, myself included, don't think this is a good idea. And we've been speaking out against this for a long time. Well, finally, the CDC has caught up to us. And like I said, I know we've talked about this on the show before, and there are a lot of you who did the same thing that I did, which is decline the hepatitis B vaccine on the day of my daughter's birth. But this is what ACIP, the CDC committee, this is a video of their vote to stop recommending the hepatitis B vaccine to babies on the day of their birth. Take a look.
Let's proceed to vote then. I'm going to call the roll. Dr. Pollack, vote on question 2, yay or nay, and whether you have COI.
Raymond Pollack, I vote no, and no conflicts of interest.
Dr. Stein.
Catherine Stein, no conflicts of interest, and I abstain.
Abstain. Dr. Levy.
Retzef Levy, I vote yes, no conflicts of interest.
Dr. Pebsworth.
Vicki Pebsworth, no conflicts of interest, I vote yes.
Dr. Malone, no COI, yay. Dr. Griffin.
Dr. Griffin, no conflicts of interest, I vote yes.
Dr. Blackburn.
Hillary Blackburn, no conflicts. I support looking at studies. I vote no on this language.
Dr. Pagano.
Dr. Pagano, no conflicts, yes.
Dr. Meissner.
I vote no.
COI?
I have no conflict of interest, strong no.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Hiblin. Dr. Hiblin, you're on mute again. I appreciate that you do that, but we need to hear your voice. You're still muted, Dr. Hiblin.
Thank you, sir.
There we go.
Thank you for your acknowledgement. I will try to improve my behavior. I have no conflicts of interest, and I vote no.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Milhound.
Hi, Kirk Milhound, no conflicts of interest. I vote yes.
Okay, what is our head count DFO? One moment. So we have a vote for the record of 6 in favor, 4 opposition, and 1 abstain. The motion passes.
The motion passes. First of all, that absolutely cracks me up, by the way, that he couldn't figure out how to get his mute button to turn off. It reminds me of that lawyer that couldn't remove the cat filter. Do you guys remember that video? Hilarious. 6-4. The ACIP committee recommends to the CDC that they change the childhood immunization schedule so that the hepatitis B vaccine is no longer recommended for babies on the day of their birth. Of course, if the mother of that baby tests negative for hepatitis B. And mothers who get prenatal care are tested for hepatitis B. So this is almost a universal thing that is tested. Okay. So I, of course, am very happy about this. This has been my position for a long time. I thought that this was a completely unnecessary vaccine, because if you as a mother don't have hepatitis B, then why does your baby on the day of their birth need the hepatitis B vaccine? There is no logical, and I think there's like a Snopes article somewhere or a factcheck.org article somewhere that quote unquote debunks my position. I've said this sentence before. There is no logical reason to give a newborn baby on the day of their birth the hepatitis B vaccine if the mother tests negative for hepatitis B. It doesn't make any sense. And I don't just preach this. I put this into practice. I will never, ever forget on the day of my oldest daughter's birth, I'm in the hospital room. I declined the hepatitis B vaccine for her. And the hospital, after I declined the vaccine, they send a perinatologist into my room. Now, a perinatologist is an OBGYN with like 2 or 3 additional years of training for high risk pregnancies. And they're supposed to be like the expert's expert. They send a perinatologist to my room that tells me how important it is for me to give my daughter this vaccine. And I say to her, why? I don't have Hep B. And this doctor hems and haws and hems and haws. And finally, she says to me, well, when you drive home from the hospital tomorrow after you're discharged, you might get in a car accident on your drive home, and your newborn baby might need a blood transfusion, and that blood might be contaminated with hepatitis B. I kid you not. Word for word, what this perinatologist says to me on the day of my daughter's birth. And I kick myself to this day that I did not have the wherewithal, despite the fact that I was a couple of hours post giving birth, to look at her and say in like the most deadpan affect ever, exactly how many times a year does that exact scenario occur? I wish that I had said that to her. I, of course, did not think of that witty comeback until afterward, because the answer to my question is, of course, 0. That never happens. That was a ridiculous, manipulative, unscientific thing for her to say to me to try to coerce me into giving my daughter the hepatitis B vaccine, which I did not do. But it does, of course, show that the so-called experts and the so-called science are corrupted. They are, as they have been for a long time, they are bought and paid for by Big Pharma, who seeks to profiteer by exploiting your vulnerable children and you in moments of vulnerability. And so I believe that this is a victory for moms and children everywhere. However, I will say, at the same time, there's a slight caveat to our celebrations here. It's not like the CDC is going to, or it's not like they changed their recommended immunization schedule and removed the hepatitis B vaccine from the schedule. They actually did not do away with it. They're simply recommending that it be delayed by 2 months. So instead of a 1-day-old baby getting this vaccine, they're now recommending that parents make this decision at the 2-month mark for their baby. So it's not entirely the victory that it's being portrayed to be. There will be a lot of babies who aren't at risk of hepatitis B because they're babies. They're not engaging in promiscuous sexual activity with prostitutes or using intravenous drugs, which is how hepatitis B is passed, who will still be subject to this series of shots. And you know my opinion on that. There's also a history of corruption with the hepatitis B vaccine itself. Of course, it doesn't make sense to give this to small children, because I've had friends who've had pediatricians tell them, well, your child may, trip and fall on the playground and be accidentally stabbed with a contaminated intravenous drug, like a drug needle, and get hepatitis B from that. That's what they're told. But the truth of the matter is, the big pharma operatives never intended this for small children until they realized that parents weren't going to opt in and give this to their children when their children were teenagers, because most parents, I think, would look at their innocent little 12 or 13-year-old and say, well, this child is not having sex with prostitutes nor shooting up heroin in the back alley. I don't think that she needs this vaccine. And because that was the reality, the CDC ACIP at the time that this was approved said, well, if adults won't go for the shots, then give them to the children. And Dr. Malone, of course, provided the receipts for that. This was something that was admitted at the time. It just wasn't widely reported on because the mainstream media and journalists are bought and paid for by Big Pharma. And so they don't question Big Pharma. Now, the exciting part of this, and I know I said good thing, caveat, there is another good thing. President Trump is very interested in the vaccine schedule. He posted after the vaccine committee voted. And he said, today, the CDC vaccine committee made a very good decision to end their hepatitis B vaccine recommendation for babies, the vast majority of whom are at no risk of hepatitis B, a disease that is mostly transmitted sexually or through dirty needles. The American childhood vaccine schedule long required 72 jabs for perfectly healthy babies, far more than any other country in the world and far more than is necessary. In fact, it's ridiculous. Many parents and scientists have been questioning the efficacy of this schedule, as have I, the president writes. That is why I have just signed a presidential memorandum directing the Department of Health and Human Services to fast track a comprehensive evaluation of vaccine schedules from other countries around the world and better align the U.S. vaccine schedule so it is finally rooted in the gold standard of science and common sense. I'm fully confident Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the CDC will get this done quickly and correctly for our nation's children. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Maha, the President of the United States says. Now that, my friends, is good news because, listen, when Bobby Kennedy was sworn into office as Secretary of HHS, I wanted him to be absolutely based and savage. Like everything that he ever wrote in a book, make it happen at HHS. We haven't seen that yet. There's an incrementalism to Bobby's strategy that, listen, you can make the argument that incremental change is what sticks, or you can be frustrated by it. I would say I'm more on the side of let's get things done a little more radically, a little more paradigm shifting changes. However, there is also great value in just giving parents implicit permission to question the schedule, which is what President Trump is doing by posting that. And it's what the CDC committee has done by their vote. Even if the next administration reverses it, there are going to be moms across the country. And I know this because I have many friends who weren't really Maha before COVID, who maybe vaccinated their children fully before COVID, who now feel perfectly comfortable. It's perfectly socially acceptable for parents to make that decision. So even if we haven't seen quite the paradigm shifting radical reform and savagery that I was hoping that we would see at HHS under Bobby Kennedy, there is a cultural difference that is being woven into the fabric of our nation that the next administration, or the next, probably won't be the next, but the next liberal administration won't be able to undo just with CDC committee votes, if that makes sense.